Craziest thing I've ever heard or seen. I guess, experienced? Married for 12 years, 4 kids together. Possibly the craziest story? I apologize because this is an extremely long story and I'm going a little crazy. That means that this might get a little broken and confusing. I'll try to split things into parts and label them, but it's going to get very long and complicated. If you're looking for a crazy story, buckle up. When I met my current wife, I had a 4-year-old son and my ex-wife had left. My wife had a 4-year-old son and her boyfriend had tied her up and threatened her at gunpoint. I found this out later. This was apparently after he had been cheating on her with a coworker and she was trying to leave. We talked for months and then finally started dating. Things seemed perfect. We had 4 other children together before I started to realize that she was struggling. Our last child was very rough in October 2021. She was on bed rest for 6 months and almost died during delivery. I recognized the symptoms of postpartum and pushed her to talk to our doctor. They set up a therapist and started her on antidepressants. She said that the counseling was going well and the medication was working. Fast forward to January 1st, my wife came to me crying and said that she had been assaulted by her sister's boyfriend. Apparently, it happened in August 2022. I immediately tore my shirt off and broke my hand on a brick wall. I know that this reaction is stupid, but I honestly didn't know what to do or how to react. I probably should have left that part out, but I think I had a psychotic break. Then she started telling me the backstory. A few months prior to this, she told her sister that she was really struggling after our last child and her sister offered her meth. It apparently helped because she would ask for more when she visited their mother, which was usually every other month. The incident, as we have been calling it, happened one night when her sister got her high and then pulled out a bottle of lemonade vodka. I was at home with 3 of our children. I have adopted her son and my oldest stays with us 75 to 80% of the year, plus our 4-year-old. She got a headache from drinking too much and her mother gave her Percocet. Great idea. When her sister's boyfriend arrived, no one remembers when that was. Totally shocking. I know she took our youngest to bed in her parents' camper. It's parked in their driveway and we usually sleep there when we visit. At some point, this is the story I have been told, she woke up to being dragged down the bed, away from our daughter. She froze and didn't know what to do. She tried to scream but couldn't. She was even more shocked because he had entered the other area, not sure how to state that politely. She passed out multiple times, and she just remembered the sound of his boots as he was leaving. She said that she cried and held our youngest until the sun came up. She went in and showered and went about her day. Her mother took her and the kids to an event that day. Wife's background. The therapists believe that this is important information. My wife had talked about being SOD at a young age, she didn't know exactly when. After her confession to me, she started remembering and telling me things about her childhood. Her father left her mother in another country while my wife was a toddler and her mother was pregnant with her sister. Her mother flew through 3 marriages after that with some terrible men. The third one apparently groomed her and SOD her for 2 years. This was after his brother would give her drugs and alcohol and saw her. The stepfather finally lost it because she got a boyfriend at 15. He destroyed her car and she confessed everything to her mother and he was promptly arrested. Somehow he was released and went back to live with them. Her mother blamed her for sleeping with her husband. Her mother told her to STFU and pretend everything was fine. Shortly after this, no idea about timeline, her real D showed up. Her mother slept with him, cheating on her husband, and then remarried him without talking about the past at all. My situation in 2022. I was diagnosed with Langerhans cell histiocytosis in 2020. It was unifocal, just a spot on my hip, so the prognosis was good. Originally, I was told that it was multiple myeloma and we were pretty scared until the biopsy. We started purchasing a home just before I was diagnosed and I didn't want to disrupt that. In 2022, the LCH was not spreading or growing. I got diagnosed with intestinal metaplasia and pernicious anemia. This caused my B12 and vitamin D to tank and I was developing early onset dementia. Due to the vitamin D deficiency, I had to have my 4 front teeth removed. I was hitting rock bottom, but they started me on B12 injections and I noticed a difference by September of 2022. My wife said that I was angry all the time earlier that year, but I think it was due to me losing my mind. Story continued. My wife said that she was convinced that I was going to leave her. The boyfriend texted her, apologizing, but she said it was fine but it couldn't happen again. She said that she told him that she needed him to shut up so she wouldn't lose her family. I was in shock. Why would you tell your abuser exactly how to control you? Lots of doctors and therapists later, they believe that she developed psychosis from drugs, postpartum, trauma, etc. and reverted back to her training from childhood. He allegedly told her that he felt something between them. WTF? So she said that they had texted maybe a dozen times. 2 weeks after the incident, my favorite dog gets very sick. She winds up passing away, but the vet is positive that she was poisoned. I was absolutely devastated. In September and October of 2022, her sister and the BF come by to hang out at our house. They talked me into hanging out with him, being nice to him and giving him relationship advice. Side note. Some things were missing from my garage after these visits. The next incident was in November when she went to her sister's house. Before that, she was actually at her mom's house and her sister told her that fuckface wouldn't give her enough drugs for both of them. My wife texted her and asked what to do. Her sister said that she had to text fuckface and ask him for some. She wanted more drugs and went to her sister's house a few days later. Obviously, her boyfriend was there. At some point, she went to lay down our youngest for a nap and fuckface came in. He pulled her off the bed and tried to get her to give him oral. She pushed him away and said no loudly, according to the story. He haphazardly swatted at her, dismissively, and she grabbed our youngest and ran downstairs. She packed up and left back to her mother's house. The BF was apparently so upset that he didn't try to contact her for 5 months. Addendum. I checked the text logs and phone activity after hearing all of this. He was texting her as often as he could. A dozen messages? There were almost 400 over 1.5 years. That's including the 5-month hiatus when he was allegedly upset at her. She said that he was blackmailing her, but I tried explaining that people don't usually blackmail people just to text them. Story continued. My mother went on hospice in another state in January of 2023. I have to travel back and forth to set things up because my sisters were pretty broken up. Don't get me wrong, it was very difficult for me too, but someone had to get things situated. Her family planned Easter at her sister's house. We went and everything seemed fine. My wife was having panic attacks at the doctor and in public since at least December 2022. I keep encouraging her to keep seeking help. By this time, I'm taking care of our children most of the day and she's sick and or depressed most of the day. I keep asking her what is wrong, but she replies, regular stuff, which means things from her childhood. I found out later that he tried to contact her after Easter. She ignored him. A week later, my aunt passed away and we went to another state for her funeral. I tried to take my mother, who was on home hospice, to the funeral, but she was too ill. This was a very rough time for me. Fuckface apparently texted her when we were heading home. She told me about it at the time, but there were about 8 messages and I didn't know that. She claims that he was just saying sorry for your loss, which apparently takes 5 to 6 messages and some replies. Sister's boyfriend's history. We met him in 2015. We were hanging out in her mother's hot tub. He immediately turned to her sister and said, "You weren't kidding. Her are huge, ha ha ha. I'm a big guy and I have rarely ever lost a physical confrontation. This guy is 5'4" minus 5'5" and I stood up intending to stomp his. My wife stopped me because her mom told her that we had to be nice. His mother passed away when he was younger, so everyone had to just ignore his ridiculous comments. I was recently retired from the military and my alarms went off when we met him. I told my wife and her mother that he was a bad person. I tried warning everyone for years. My gut has never been wrong about these things and, surprise, it was right again. I don't care if people smoke, but this guy was always drunk and seemed to be on some uppers. I didn't know until later, but it was meth. My wife's mother and her sister constantly told me that I was overreacting all the way up until the confession. Story. In June of 2023, her sister finds out that, OMG, her BF is messaging and sleeping with other women. Her sister confronted the women. July of 2023, her sister and her 2 children move in with us. I can tell the children are neglected and the BF isn't giving her any money. I have a weakness for children and I try to take them out and teach them things. They're not bad kids, just have bad parents. They only drank sugary drinks and we mainly drink water. It was a rough adjustment period, but I managed to get them on the right track. Sil is looking for a job and dating. I wish that I was joking. We live in the middle of nowhere and have some land with a lot of chickens. I teach everyone how to care for the chickens and do some stuff outside. Sil gets served custody papers and just gets drunk all day, but she actually got a job. I spend most of my day taking care of her children, my children and Sil, since she is passed out drunk on my couch. In August of 2023, my mother passed away. Her wishes were in ironclad paperwork and she was immediately cremated. My wife says, "Let me know if you need anything." I'm so sorry, because she's not good with emotions. Fuckface comes by to pick up his kids. My wife has a panic attack and tells me to shoot him if he comes in our house. I'm extremely confused, to say the least. I, obviously, didn't hurt him because he was polite and I didn't know what was going on. After her sister moved in, Fuckface is texting my wife to talk to his kids and whining about how much he loves her sister. Looking through them after the confession, she's comforting him admittedly, just basic stuff like, "I'm sorry." I found out later that messages from this time frame were deleted. Sue, that's actually the condensed version LMFAO sorry, I'm intoxicated. So after my wife tells me and sees how many messages there were, she is completely stunned. She says that she doesn't remember texting him, contents or anything. She googled how to permanently delete messages after he started texting. She says that she was terrified that he would tell me. Therapists and doctors are claiming psychosis and severe addiction issues. She's in rehab and plus trying EMDR for all of the trauma. She's also in shock that I didn't immediately throw her out the door. I already have PTSD, but now I have betrayal trauma. It's really not fun because I now see myself as pathetic and worthless. I see myself as fat with tiny arms and a small. My wife barely remembers a half dozen things from the last 2 years. We're seeing individual counselors and a marriage counselor. I would love to tear Fuckface in half, but it would just get me in trouble and my children need me. Not seeking retribution will be the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life, but they're worth swallowing what pride I have left. I imagine that most people will just say leave her, but she's absolutely destroyed. She might be terrible, but she gave me everything that I cherish in life. She took care of me for a long time. Psychosis makes sense to me, but I'm not exactly the most stable person right now lol. I just needed to vent. Supposedly journaling works, so maybe this is similar? Ninja edit. I probably would not have found out. I was so stuck in everything that I had going on. Her doctor switched her medication to antipsychotics and she said that it was like she woke up from a nightmare. She told me within 2 weeks of starting the antipsychotics. Edit 2. My wife actually tried getting messages recovered. I talked to quite a few people and they say it's just not possible given the time frame and because phones use file-based encryption now instead of disk encryption.